1 week season.
Welcome everybody to week 9 of Solo Ship. It's the Halloween edition. I am Squirrel Patrol from 444 Football. I'm dressed up like a guy with a real job. Joined by JMToWin from 1 week season. JM, we had some breaking news right as we come on the show and start recording. But DeAndre Swift is out, so that's going to leave Kyle Monangai probably as the primary back in Chicago. It actually follows a day of news. I started my first show at 9:30. Talking about how we just don't have a lot of running back value on the slate. And then Rhamondre Stevenson is out as well for the Patriots, which means they could have no other alternative than Travion Henderson. But yeah, I guess, how was your week 8? And then, any thoughts on all of this running back value that we're getting popping up as we come on the show here?
Yeah, week 8, solid. It's been that way this season. I'm up a decent amount of money, but without any huge weekends, and it's kind of unusual in DFS. Just keep having solid results. Good weekend for the OWS fam, so we'll take that. The injury stuff. Actually, let's put a little gap in there. I came not being dressed up today. I have a little mask on for my show with Pete this morning. But what's funny? After I finished my show with Pete, I thought, you know what I should have done? I should have worn a suit and dressed up as a person with a real job. So
yes.
When I first saw you, I was pretty excited. The running back stuff, I kind of started last night. It was like, Rhamondre Stevenson's not playing, is he? Because, they got Dearness Johnson off the Cardinals practice squad, and they've been shopping for running backs, has been the news. And it was like, oh, they're just waiting to announce this, for competitive advantage or whatever. And then this morning I kept in my content saying, if DeAndre Swift is out, because he missed the 2 practices this week, whereas before he'd been like practice limited. It's interesting because we got stuff opening up. I think for me, I just did the Angles podcast talking about directional certainty on this slate, right? There's not a ton of spots where it's like, we know that the points are piling up on this guy, but directional certainty, we know the Bengals are going to attack through the air. We know that the 49ers are going to use Christian McCaffrey. One of the spots of directional certainty for me was, we know that the Bears are likely to do well on offense here. And the issue has been, since they came out of the bye, they've been biased toward the rushing attack. But then DeAndre Swift's had, these lower body issues, so they've been splitting the backfield work. And so it's like, we know that the Bears are going to score points. We know it's probably going to be biased through the ground, but do we get enough points concentrating on one guy? I'll tell you what, I went through in my journal this week, like running back scores against, like backfield scores against the Bengals. It's all like 34 plus points every week. So I don't think that Monangai gets like 100% of the touches, but yeah, to me, he's head and shoulders above Travion Henderson. Even if he steps into Rhamondre's role, like Rhamondre hasn't been lighting the world on fire, right? So like, I think that Monangai is head and shoulders above the other guys. Then I'd rank Kareem Hunt next, and then Travion Henderson close to Kareem Hunt, but below that.
Okay, yeah. So the Bengals are allowing the most rushing yards per game in the NFL, the most total yards per game in the NFL, the most points in the NFL. They're in a high total game, not surprisingly, against the Bears. So that like the Kyle Monangai news is like definitely going to be big, because like the expectations of any team playing Cincinnati, especially the running backs of any team playing Cincinnati, like have high expectations. And now that guy is like 4,700, I think, on DraftKings. So it's going to be a value price tag. I think he's probably number 1. He has the pass catching ability. Like, I guess we wouldn't say. I guess I still think Christian McCaffrey is maybe the number 1, running back still in terms of ownership, because now we have much easier ways to afford McCaffrey. But then in my mind, it's probably Monangai second. It's interesting for you to rank Kareem Hunt right after Monangai. Was that your ranking?
It was right above Travion Henderson, but a huge gap between Monangai and Kareem Hunt.
Okay, yeah, but I think that's interesting. It's that's a game that we want to get to. That's the highest total game of the week,
right?
Buffalo, Kansas City, and I've been looking at that game and thinking well, that's the game I want to start my stacks with. And then actually some other games show up as more optimal stacks than that, because the players in the Chiefs and Bills game are so expensive that it's not easy to stack up that game. Mahomes and Allen are the 2 most expensive quarterbacks. But then there's a Kareem Hunt there at 4,700, right? And there's some Rashard Smith concern, but Isaiah Pacheco out. That opens up. Well, you can get the primary running back from the game you want to stack at just 4,700. But like I don't know, I'm a little bit too worried about the Chiefs just either not rushing at all or like splitting the work between Smith and Hunt. So I think that's a concern. I've got like probably Travion Henderson higher on my list, but yeah, there's going to be like some kind of like Dearness Johnson thing that's going to ruin my Sunday.
Or Terrell Jennings yeah. Well, I think, and it's interesting, right? We don't usually start at running back position, but I think this is a core topic of discussion here. Like everything you said about the Hunt stuff, that's why I like it, right? The game environment and all that. He averaged 15.5 DraftKings points per game last year when Pacheco was out. P. Ryan was there, and they sprinkled him in for some pass game work. I think that's what we'll see with Brashard Smith. They trust Kareem Hunt. And then also, like, yeah, you could say maybe they just attack through the air, but that's not how you attack Buffalo, right? Like, you have to be two-dimensional against Buffalo because they're bad against the run. And what they're good at is creative pass defense. So if you can force them to try to stop the run, then that compromises them on the back end as well. And so I do see it as a spot where, you call a balanced game if you're the Chiefs. Obviously, you're putting a lot on Mahomes' plate, and they're a pass-heavy offense. But, and like I said, I think that there's a gap between Monangai and these guys. And I'm fine with the idea of ranking Travion Henderson above, because we've also seen 2 weeks in a row, San Francisco, Miami have just put a bunch of big bodies on the field against Atlanta. And they've been like, yeah, you're fast and you're good on defense, but you're small. We're just going to put big bodies out there and run you over and kind of bully you, right? And the Patriots have the personnel to do that. They have the offensive acumen to do that. They're one of the higher, like 12 personnel teams in the NFL already. So why not throw some extra bodies out there? The Dolphins were literally throwing a sixth offensive lineman out there, like a ton of plays against the Falcons, and just like, all right, cool, let's just run you over. And so, I do think that could be the Patriots' approach here, to where, Rhamondre hasn't performed well in this role, but we know Travion Henderson's a home run hitter. We know that this has been the blueprint for attacking the Falcons the last couple of weeks. And so I definitely think the ceiling is higher on Travion Henderson. I just feel like the certainty on like the touches and the touchdowns is a little bit lower than we have with Kareem Hunt. So I'm definitely fine ranking them either way. I think it's pretty close there.
So there were some other running backs that are projecting as the highest owned running backs, like as of this morning, guys like Jalen Warren. I don't know if you mentioned Tyrone Tracy or not, but I guess like some of those other running backs that had been projecting as high owned, like does this kind of knock them off the board for you, or you still have any interest there?
They were off the board for me already.
Great.
That's what sucks is like when this happens, when we have that like 20% Tyrone Tracy, 15, 20% Jalen Warren, I always just look at that as edge, right? It's like, it's within the realm of possibilities that these guys hit at high ownership, but over time, they're going to underwhelm. And over time, 20% of the field is going to have this guy, 15% this guy. And I just get edge on that, like over time, right? So that's going to be the one disappointing factor of Monangai, is like the ownership on those guys is going to come down, which means some edge is being taken away. But I am excited enough. I kind of think Monangai is going to be like 50% owned. Am I wrong on that? Like you said, you think CMC still has more ownership this week?
So I was looking at the price of Monangai. He's 4,600. I mean, we'll see where projections end up, and like the prop market expectations. But I get 4,600. I think just because it's both matchup and injury related, right? Like he's clearly too cheap without DeAndre Swift there at 4,600. And I think people are going to perceive more certainty than with Kareem Hunt, who's the $4,700 guy. I do, Monangai will probably be higher owned. Well, there's like Travion Henderson is there. Travion Henderson's there at 4,900. That might depend on like coach verbiage and if we get any kind of indication that like, well, no, it's like next man up and like Travion's going to be the primary back or something like that. So like I think Monangai and Travion Henderson will be competing, and I think Christian McCaffrey and like Jonathan Taylor will be competing. So there's gonna be competition at the high end and at the low end. I think McCaffrey's like $1,000 cheaper than Jonathan Taylor. It's just a question, like, do people say like, well, I can play like Monangai, I can play Travion Henderson, and now I can afford Jonathan Taylor, whereas before it's like, well, I need to go to the $5,500 Jalen Warren, so I need that $1,000, and I have to play McCaffrey instead of Jonathan Taylor. I think it'll be probably Monangai highest, and then McCaffrey. So because there's competition at both ends of the salary spectrum. Yeah.
I mean, I think if we got to think that the Bears can score 30 against the Bengals, right? Like the Jets did it. And so I think if you're not on Monangai, you got to play Caleb Williams, because like Monangai is the only show in town in the backfield. Obviously, Roshan Johnson will be there to kind of soak up some stuff, but like they're fine going one back. It's just been because of the injury to Swift that they've been splitting things. And so, and Monangai's looked good. So yeah, I think if you're not playing Monangai, you got to be like, well, why am I not playing Caleb Williams then? Because clearly I'm saying, I think the touchdowns come through the passing attack. And so, yeah, I don't know, like some edge went away, but I also like the certainty. And so I'm always fine taking certainty falling my way, because I think that I lean into certainty more than people. Like I'll just probably lock Monangai into all my rosters, quite literally, is how I will attack things, because my whole thing here has been like Bears backfield's a great play. It's just a question mark of the split. And now that question mark's gone. So yeah, disappointing to lose like the Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren ownership edge, but I'll take the added certainty as well. So kind of shakes out fine either way, but I like it for building.
Yeah, I will say that my take on this has always been with backup running backs, where it's like, something happened since pricing was set. Like, I don't like to argue with math, and like Monangai is clearly too cheap, and if we get some like indication that it's just Travion Henderson in the backfield, like those guys are way too cheap for their production at their price tags. Like, so I don't argue with the math of like a mispricing.
Yeah.
But, well, how I was going to start off the show, right, is like I think there's like 3 premier game environments on the week. We have like 3 big games with 50-point plus totals, and a couple of games right behind those higher total, 50+ point games. We have Kansas City at Buffalo. That's the highest at 52.5. The Chiefs are favored in Buffalo by a point, and the Chiefs have been throwing the ball all over the field. Then we've got, so even with like Isaiah Pacheco out, Patrick Mahomes still very much in play, thinking that it's going to be like a Chiefs passing first game. We also have the Colts visiting Pittsburgh. That's got a 50-point total. The Colts also road favorites. They're favored by 3. And then the other high total game, the Bengals and the Bears, one we've kind of touched on already, with Caleb Williams and Kyle Monangai. But the Bears also a road favorite, 3-point road favorite, 51-point total. Do one of those like game environments like stand out to you? Is there like another game environment that maybe stands out to you? Or do you think this is really not, now that we've got a bunch of like mispriced value, this is really not a game environment slate at all?
No, well, I think it's still a game environment slate. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an interesting question. I think it's still a game environment slate. I think that those 3 games, what the presence of those 3 games does is like sort of these fringe games like 49ers and Giants, where it looks good, but the 49ers have topped 21 points only twice this year, or like Raiders and Jags, where you're like, man, both teams coming off the bye. What if they figure some things out? Like those games like take a big dent, because it's like you would need all 3 of these other games to fail or to just play out in weird ways. And I think all 3 of these games are pretty high confidence, right? Because you've got the Bears, you have Ben Johnson against the Bengals defense, and the Bengals looking great with Flacco. You got the shoulder issue is like the one question mark there. You've got Colts have been tremendous all season. The Steelers have been, horrible on defense. And we know that Aaron Rodgers is capable of keeping up in any game. And then like the big question there is like, can the Steelers slow things down a little bit? Can this be one of those random, like once per season Mike Tomlin games where against all odds, like they figure out a way to slow down the Colts and it's like a 13-18 game or something. So there are like very small risk factors on those games. And then Bills and Chiefs is just like, do enough points pile up to matter at the price tags. But I think all 3 of those games are really high confidence bets to be high scoring. And so definitely those games stand out. And I think the other games have a tough time competing because of how high confidence those games are and like the guesswork you have to take on to get to some of the other games.
Yeah, I think so. You actually like touched there on like the very first thing that I thought. The very first thing you said is like the very first thing I thought, which is that like going into this, I think like optimal-ish like lineups and optimal-ish like game stacks, we're giving you Jackson Dart because he's too cheap at 5,200.
Right.
And then you've got like Tyrone Tracy there and Wan'Dale Robinson. They're a little bit too cheap without like Malik Neighbors and without Cam Scadaboo. And so you can get Christian McCaffrey in that lineup as like a run back, right? So you've got now a game stack of like Dart, Tracy, Christian McCaffrey, maybe Wan'Dale Robinson. But now we have so much savings that like the game you want to get to is actually Kansas City and Buffalo, or at least the quarterback that I think I want to get to is Patrick Mahomes. And he was like maybe too expensive to stack with his top wide receivers going into this, but now you can afford that without like having to drop down to Jackson Dart. So it kind of pushes those some of those secondary games and this like, well, I think for the price, I think this could be better than that. It's like, well, now you have a multiple, sub 5K running backs that you can put into your lineup. So you can kind of stack any game you want. It's like, I think for me, I think the Chiefs Bills, like particularly with Mahomes, like stands out as a top game environment. Then and then we're the Bears and Bengals, then like my confidence in that game environment actually went up without DeAndre Swift, just because I can stack it like cheaper. Now, and maybe it's a mini stack of like Jamar Chase and Kyle Monangai, but now I can probably afford Jamar Chase and another expensive, wide receiver or running back in the same lineup. So that game environment looks really good, at least as a mini stack. And I'll certainly have like Caleb Williams probably as one of my top 5 quarterbacks. And then, the Colts and Steelers. I like Daniel Jones. I have liked, playing Daniel Jones the whole season. He's still 4th in the league in passing yards. We think it's like just Jonathan Taylor or bust, but like, and if Jonathan Taylor does rip off like 3 80-yard runs, like, you probably need him at whatever his price tag is. And Daniel Jones then probably isn't having a great game. But the Colts passing offense is probably better than people have realized. So all 3 of those game environments are definitely in play. And I still think that the quarterbacks there probably aren't going to see super high ownership because some of this is going to go to like Jackson Dart. I do think that like Caleb Williams will probably be maybe the second highest owned quarterback, but we have to see how things shake out.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Patrick Mahomes plus Rashee Rice, 14.7K. Joe Flacco plus Jamar Chase, 14K. You bias toward Mahomes and Rice in that?
I think so. Yeah, I think I would be like going to Mahomes and Rice. I think Rashee Rice is still too cheap, and like we have to remember because like his 2 games, 3 touchdowns in 2 games, 16 receptions. Like this is not a situation where he's like working himself back from injury,
right?
And like oh, there might be some rust. Like, and he hasn't played. Like that first game was a 31-0 win against the Raiders, right?
Right.
Like, I don't think he was playing, and like the Chiefs like started kneeling down ridiculously early in that game, and the Raiders just, countered by like running into the offensive line, a few times and then gave the ball back to the Chiefs who continued to kneel down. So like Rashee Rice probably can put up more, can probably look even better than he's looked so far. And he's still too cheap. He's like 7,600. I mean, that's, I guess that's like only $800 cheaper than Jamar Chase. But I would still, what I think about like Jamar Chase paired with Joe Flacco is that you can just play Jamar Chase. Like the reason I want to play Jamar Chase at 8,400 is because he's getting 18 targets per game. Like I don't need to stack him then with his quarterback because I can just get all the points by playing Jamar Chase. And if that differs, right, and if it is like a T Higgins week or something, well, I didn't want to play like Jamar Chase necessarily at 8,400 in the first place. So yeah, I think I have a strong like lean there to like the Mahomes and Rashee Rice. Although I love the idea of a Mahomes, Rashee Rice, Jamar Chase lineup.
Yeah. I mean, Flacco and Chase have basically put up 45, 45, and 70. Mahomes and Rice have put up 50 and 50. I think it's closer than you're seeing it as. And, Flacco's you take out the game against the Green Bay defense, and he's got 29 and 24. He's a pocket passer, but everything's going to Chase. And also, you said Rice has more ceiling than he's shown. I also want to say the same thing about Chase, because in this stretch with Flacco, he has 0 receptions of over 20 yards, which we know he can catch a short pass and take it 70. And he has only 2 touchdowns in these 3 games. Like he's still capable of adding 60 yards and an extra touchdown in one of these games that he hasn't posted. So I think that to me, that pairing's close. But I've been looking at it through the Flacco Chase lens and probably not enough through the Mahomes and Rice lens. And just like literally just while you were talking, it was like, oh wait, they're literally like almost the same price. I think that both of those are like really sharp ways to build this week.
So, we kind of touched on the 3 top, point total game environments. There's actually 3 other games that have teams that have like very competitive implied point totals to like the teams from those games, right? Like the Lions are 9.5 point favorites at home against the Vikings. So that gives them a high implied point total, but obviously a large spread. The Packers 13.5 point favorites in a game with a 44 point total at home against the Panthers. The Rams 14 point favorites against the Saints in a game with a 43.5 point total. So like kind of just assuming, any interest or primary interest would lie with the heavily favored teams, the Rams, the Packers, and the Lions. Like, do you think that's a place you'll go in high volume? Do you have any interest there? Or do you even like it as a game stack?
I don't like any of them as game stacks. I won't be going to the Packers. I think Puka's viable, but I think it's going to be hard for him to put up a 30-pointer, especially because he's not really using the red zone. And so to me, that's not necessarily a guy I have to go to. The Lions is the one that stands out to me because we know that against division opponents, they're willing to kind of run up the score. We know against, elite conference opponents are willing to do that. They've scored 30, 30, 31, and 31 in their last 4 games against Flores. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 28 plus DraftKings points in 3 of those 4 games because when you're blitzing Goff a lot, he's going to get the ball out quickly, going to get it to his first read. It's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then Jahmyr Gibbs last year, 49 in this matchup with Montgomery out, but also 35 in this matchup with Montgomery playing. Makes sense, right? Because the way that the Vikings throw an offense off and also stop the run is by just putting tons of guys at the line of scrimmage. But you have a home run threat like Gibbs. Once he gets past that, now he's got open field, right? So I think that we've got a pretty good shot at getting a 30-pointer from the Lions this week. I think a much better shot than we have of getting a 30-pointer from the Packers or the Rams. And so I definitely want to be thinking about Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. You got a different take on that, or is that how you're seeing these spots?
That's the order I'd rank it. I probably like Lions and then Rams and then Packers.
Yeah,
I'll say
100%.
Yeah, I think that actually Tucker Kraft is the 4th cheapest, the 4th most expensive tight end on FanDuel, which is like a relative discount from his DraftKings pricing. So I actually do kind of like Tucker Kraft on FanDuel. It's like a one-off. I think that I probably like the Lions and Vikings as a game stack, maybe a little bit more than it sounds like you were talking about. But probably not for a single entry or high, more for like a multi-entry set.
Yeah,
that I think you could put some Jordan Addison in there, who I think was a great call of yours either last week or the week
a couple
before.
weeks ago. Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. And I think even Justin Jefferson's now just the 4th most expensive wide receiver, which is a little bit of a discount. And I think he's going to see very low ownership. Like I don't think I'd be hitting the Vikings very hard in like single entry, maybe larger field single entry. You could maybe do a Jahmyr Gibbs and Jordan Addison like mini stack or something like that. I think that makes some sense. So, but I think for me, it's like the Lions are the team I'm interested in there. And like, I think I'll have a pretty hefty, well, maybe not hefty, but like a fair amount of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'll have more like Jamar Chase. I'll have more Rashee Rice. Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, if I'm spending up and can afford a second like expensive wide receiver, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely in play. And like probably more so for me than like Puka, because I even with the Rams just feeding Puka the ball all the time, like they might not have to do much in the second half here,
right? Yeah,
as a 14-point favorite, and the Saints are starting, I think, their rookie quarterback, which
who got beat out. Like they drafted him this year in the second round. They had every incentive to have him starting, and then Spencer Rattler beat him out like pretty resoundingly in the preseason, where like seemed to be the reports. And honestly, like I've been saying it all year, but Rattler's played really well. He just he's not winning games. He doesn't have the explosive element, but it's like he's been playing well. But Shuck's clearly a step below that in what they were seeing. And so against the Rams on the road, I don't have faith here beyond just like weird things happen in the NFL. I think I like that idea of the stack. I think I built a Gibbs Addison practice build earlier this week, like just messing around with what I might use in single entry. And I don't plan to actually go there, but like, I think it's on the fringe, which pulls it into like larger field stuff, like certainly strongly viable, because you have to take that leap of, again, like the smaller the tournament field, to me, the more confidence you want to have behind every single play. Whereas there's a lot of guesswork on the Viking side of like, maybe JJ McCarthy, he's looked bad in 7 out of 8 quarters, but that's a small sample size. Maybe he steps in and looks really good here. And I kind of want to see it first, but I think in large field play, the idea of saying, what if the Vikings keep it close? Then it becomes really interesting because then you got like elite ceiling on that Lion side.
Yeah, and actually, I had mentioned that this morning, and then I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, I don't mind the idea of JJ McCarthy's just $4,900. We've only seen him in 2 NFL games, and based off of like preseason performances and training camp reports, people were very high on him, like going into his first season, and then he got injured, and then going into his second season, people were high on him again. And yeah, we saw like 1.5 like bad games, and we're like, well, he's a dud, and we're like skipping like totally over him in a high point total game. But like I do also trust Vegas, with had to have some amount of knowledge, right? That like maybe I don't have, or a certain amount of expertise that I don't have, and like with a 9.5 point spread, and obviously like Detroit's not a defense you necessarily want to attack, but yeah, maybe for large field play, like JJ McCarthy, and then maybe with Jordan Addison or Jefferson, and then having a couple of Lions on that team. Actually, one other game I wanted to touch on, because I think that there's some interesting news on both sides, Jacksonville and the Raiders. Jacksonville, one of the big injury news things we got before the running backs is Travis Hunter put on IR, which like I thought that was going to be Brian Thomas. If any wide receiver was going to be out, I thought it was going to be Thomas, not Travis Hunter. But does that open up like Brian Thomas for you, or any of these like cheaper Jacksonville pass catchers, Parker Washington or Hunter Long? And then on the opposite side of that game, you've got the Raiders, and you have Brock Bowers coming back, and he's just 5,000. What are your thoughts on that game? And do you think you'll go any of those places?
Yeah, I'll run through it quickly. I don't think that like Hunter hasn't been the reason that BTJ hasn't been performing, right? Like he's been seeing low target volume. I don't think it really changes anything. And I don't know that it changes much for the other guys. It's been an issue of Trevor Lawrence not playing well. And so we're still waiting on that. The Bauer side, I said this is what I said on Pete's show. Like he was appropriately priced last year at like 57 to 5,800. And he was being projected to take like a big step forward this year, which is why he was being drafted so high. And like, he wasn't being drafted so high in best ball drafts because of his last year's performance. It was because of last year's performance, then projecting another step forward, right? We still don't know. He could have taken a step forward as a player, but like the offense has taken a step back. So I think that like he was appropriately priced at like 5,800 last year. He was putting up Tyler Warren's games, right? Like 14, 18 points. And then he had a couple 30 plus point games, and that stands out to people. It was mostly 14, 18. And so I think like he's underpriced, but maybe not as underpriced as preseason expectations would have had us believe, because the offense is so bad around him. But no, like I think that Warren, then Bowers, then Kittle, then Kraft are kind of my rankings at tight end. But I think that you could rearrange them in any order, and I wouldn't argue against it too strongly. And so, I think Bowers is by far like the sharpest play from that game on paper, and I feel pretty confident in going there. I just think probably people are overrating like how underpriced he is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's not really popping off the page in projections so far that are very like rudimentary at this point. He's not like popping off the page even at 5,000 as like a highly projected value, and that could have to do with the point total being lower than the other games. But I do, there's definitely some interest there. There's this idea that maybe he's just been hampered by this injury, and like maybe it's a kind of an upgrade getting Geno Smith at quarterback. We just haven't seen it yet because he's been playing through this injury instead. And like that, if he had just been sitting these games, we wouldn't have we'd have much higher expectations, right? If he just played game one, then sat, would be like, oh wow, yeah, like now we get Brock Bowers back. He's just 5K. It's a total misprice. But like, yeah, maybe it also, the game environment itself, says something as well. I guess maybe last thing, there's basically just two other games we haven't really touched on at all. The Falcons at the Patriots, we know the Travion Henderson news, like anything else you'd be interested in there with on the Falcons or the Patriots side?
No.
Fair enough. And then Chargers and Titans is the last game we haven't really touched on at all. Chargers are 10-point road favorites. The game's got a 43.5 point total. I could see myself in multi-entry playing some Justin Herbert and Rhamondre Gadsden, and in case things end up that way, the Titans have a wide receiver that is super cheap, DK, that's put up a couple of good games in a row and is still, I think, 3,900. Not clear we need that value anymore, though. Anything you're interested in from that game?
Yeah, I think that I think we should. It's pretty high confidence that the Chargers will score points, and it's pretty high confidence that they'll have relatively low passing volume if they're dominating this game. So I think Kamani Vidal is still really interesting, and I do wonder if his ownership is going to go down with all this running back value, And so I think that could be like a Monangai Vidal roster, or even like Monangai, Travion Henderson Vidal roster. Probably gives you a really different look than what other people are going to be working with.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, Vidal had been like totally put off my radar because of all this other running back value,
Yeah.
and I'm like running all these like sample lineups that have like Henderson and Kyle Monangai, and then it is still getting Tyrone Tracy and Jalen Warren. But like, yeah, actually, I think assuming Hassan Haskins is still out, that Kamani Vidal has like a couple pretty good games under his belt now. And that's against like I've stopped waiting for the Titans defense to turn around or for the offense to turn around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good place to go. But it is hot in this room in this suit. I forgot what this is like. So we'll start wrapping things up. Any final thoughts on the week?
Yeah, congratulations on getting a real grown-up job, and excited for what's ahead for you. And that's it for me.
All right, yeah. So good luck to everybody this week. We'll hope to see you at the top of the leaderboards, and we will catch you all next week. Happy Halloween, everybody.